Betsy Woodruff is in Washington. She's a political reporter for the Daily Beast. Betsy, thanks for joining us. We know that Hillary Clinton will definitely hit Donald Trump about his policies, but what else can we expect her to talk about?
One thing I'm paying attention to is to see if she goes on defense at all. You know, foreign policy has been a bit of a liability for her in her presidential primary that's currently underway. Bernie Sanders has hit her really hard multiple times over the fact that she voted to authorize the war in Iraq. And of course, the United States intervention in Libya is widely seen as a bit of a debacle. You know, even just this week, we learned about the tragic death of hundreds of migrants fleeing metastasizing chaos in North Africa to try to escape to Europe. It's going to be interesting to see if Clinton makes the case that things in the Middle East perhaps aren't as chaotic as they seem, or that they're fixable, and that if she were president, the status quo there would be better. It's going to be interesting to see if she tries to distance herself from Obama's legacy at all in foreign policy, or if she makes the case that she'll be able to continue how things have been going thus far as that particular region. So that's what I'm keeping an ear out for.
Betsy, Secretary Clinton has said that Donald Trump is unqualified for the presidency, but obviously many Americans, not just his supporters, but people that he's brought into the Republican Party, he's gotten a lot of votes there. He is within 4 points of her in the latest Quinnipiac poll. So what does she need to get across today to sway some of those swing voters that may, perhaps even those never Trump people?
You know, that's the million-dollar question, because the voters who haven't decided yet are a fairly diverse bunch. Now, the Never Trump cohort is not a particularly large sector of voters. Most polls show that the Republican primary electorate is just as supportive of Hillary Clinton of Donald Trump, as Democrats are of Hillary Clinton. That said, many folks in the Never Trump orbit, particularly in the foreign policy orbit, are quite plugged in, have good access to donors, understand Republican politicking pretty well, and they could be a valuable asset to Hillary Clinton if she manages to reach out to them, especially on foreign policy. So if we hear some sort of hawkish undertones in the way that she talks about the United States' role in the world, if we hear perhaps more of a focus on the importance of internationalism, on the United States renewing its commitment to NATO, spending more money on defense, spending more money on the military, I think that could be her way of sort of dog whistling to Republican defense hawks who are uncomfortable with Trump that she's the most hawkish or the most interventionist or at least the most pro-muscular American of any of the candidates running.
Betsy, those Never Trump people, are they Never Trump, so perhaps Hillary, or Never Trump and I'm staying home?
It really varies. I've talked to a number of folks who are on the right and are adamantly opposed to Donald Trump, and it depends on who you talk to. Of course, there is an appetite for a third party or independent candidate, but the names we've heard floated thus far are people who either have, unequivocally ruled out the possibility of running, like Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, or folks who have basically zero name ID, like National Review writer David French. I think perhaps the most likely outcome that we'll see is that the Never Trump cohort will be shown to be significantly less influential, less impactful than a lot of folks think. I mean, Never Trump folks are similar to libertarians in that a ton of them are in D.C. They're well plugged in media. They're well represented in the Capitol Hill and think tank world. But when you actually get out into quote unquote real America, when you look at, for instance, suburban soccer moms or folks who live in the suburbs of Toledo, voters that really have an outsized influence in how some of these swing state votes, I think Never Trumpers, libertarians, that particular cohort is pretty underrepresented and less influential than we might think.
So obviously Donald Trump has been attacking Hillary Clinton, but he also started attacking the president, particularly after President Obama criticized Trump. Trump said that, Obama doesn't have a clue, and I think even more interesting, he said that he would hit Obama like he hit Bill Clinton if he continues to get involved in this race. I want to ask you, what do you think of these attacks? Is this a good thing, or do you think it might backfire for Trump?
I feel like it's extremely risky to make any predictions about how Trump's political tactics are going to work out. That said, it's funny that Trump is critical of Obama being involved in the race because he's been so hands-off thus far. In fact, White House aides have been telling reporters that Obama is really antsy to get more involved in this race, that he really wants to start going after Trump, so we can expect Obama to target Trump with perhaps much more acute criticism than we've been hearing thus far. And I think Trump versus Obama is going to be a central central narrative over the next few months. Of course, it's going to be messy. It's going to be fascinating to see if Trump brings up some of the scurrilous and slightly fact-free attacks he's leveled at Obama in the past, particularly the birther argument. We know Trump's very comfortable with mentioning conspiracy theories, with acting like stories that are completely discredited publicly might have more truth to them than we know they do. And I think as Obama gets more involved, there's a high likelihood we'll hear more criticism from Trump in that particular vein.
Betsy, before I let you go, I want to ask you, there was an interview that Donald Trump did with the Hollywood Reporter of all publications, and it was an interesting question that was posed to him. Did he ever vote for Bill Clinton? And he refused to answer that question. I'm sure now reporters are trying to, as best as they can, suss out whether or not that happened. What are you hearing?
It's fascinating. That whole interview in and of itself is really just an amazing piece of journalism. It's weird Trump didn't answer that question. Another thing that I found intriguing about it is that in that interview, Trump indicated he didn't know what the Brexit is. Of course, That's the effort in the UK to pull out of the European Union. I mean, this is one of Trump's central issues, right? Countries being more nationalist, less internationalist. The fact that he didn't know this very basic term that, although, most Americans might not be familiar with, you'd expect most national leaders kind of to be up on. That was fascinating. So a really revealing interview. I hope we have more reads like that to come.
Although he was very well versed in what happened in the Cincinnati Zoo when Hunter Walker asked him that question. So
Aren't
there's
we
that.
all? Aren't we all?
We are. Betsy Woodruff in D.C. Thanks so much, Betsy.
Sure thing.